317, you're under arrest for criminal damage. You're also under arrest for racially aggravated public order for the comments that you've said.
Hi, I'm Andy.
And I'm Roger.
And welcome to The Middle,
where we try to have thoughtful conversations
about awkward topics
on our search to find the middle.
We're going to give you last week's news today.
It's a slogan we should put on a t-shirt.
Stop touching her!
I am tonight announcing my candidacy.
Taylor Swift. Look, my biggest issue with marriage is that I think that it's a fundamentally flawed institution that is built on the oppression of women.
I will not be lectured about sexism and misogyny.
Having truly rational conversations about controversial issues is risky these days.
Andy.
G'day, Roger.
How you doing?
How's it going? I've got an incident that happened to me during the week, and I'm keen to get your reaction to it.
Tell Uncle Roger.
All right. So, do you ever beep when you go into shops?
What do you mean beep?
You know how, like, at shops they have, like theft protection, the gates or whatever that go do. Like,
now that you mention it, Andy, I do beep quite a lot, but I always beep on the way out, never on the way in.
I beep both on the way in. Mostly on the way in, actually, and then I don't beep on the way out.
If you beep on the way in,
maybe it's just like a mental thing, and it's actually even on both sides. But nonetheless, I do very often beep on the way in, but not on the way out, which makes me wonder how reliable are these gates. But anyway, that's not the story. So I would say I'm a 30% chance to beep when I go into a shop, and sometimes on the way out as well. I'm not sure what it is. I don't know if it's like my phone. There must be some electronic thing that interferes with the sensors. I actually have no idea what it is, but it just happens all the time. And to be honest with you, I'm a bit over it because it's sort of like, you get this moment of like, do I have like someone like running after me because I beeped who's going to expect to go through my bags and like search me, like, which I'm not for. So I don't like it, right, to be honest, and I'm a bit over it. So the other day, what happened is I went to a local, like I would say an upscale supermarket near where I live. And I mean, I laid down $130 worth of groceries, which might just sound like a regular shop in any supermarket any day of the week nowadays. But like probably more so in the sense that like it was just like one small bag of like 5 things, like very...
You were hitting that...
high cost.
You were hitting that Parmesan Reggiano, weren't you?
Yeah. I had Pecorino Romano in there. Anyway, so I laid down, $130 on this like small handful of items. And I just sort of felt like I actually went to their checkout to
the manned one.
Yeah, the manned one. Like I didn't do the self-checkout thing. And they even asked me, like, would you like a receipt? So it's like optional whether you want one or not, right? And so I just knew that I had this bag of groceries that I had just literally right at the checkout, right at the front of the store next to where these gates are. Like I just literally paid for them, right? And I walked outside the shop, I beep, right? And then there's this like security guard. Now, to be fair to the security guard, I have no beef with the security guard because that's his job. That's literally his job. But like he says to me, oh, can I just check your bag? And like, look, my starting point is that I'm just kind of like a little bit fed up at this whole beeping all the time thing. And I just looked at him and I said, no, I always beep. No, you don't have the right to look at my bag. And then he said, oh, well, it's a condition of entry into the store. And I didn't say anything. I just looked at him with this, like a bit of a weird look. And I just walked off. I just left him. I was like, what are you going to do? Honestly, what are you going to do? And I just walked off. Nothing.
Didn't yell after you?
But no. But like, I was just thinking, what is he going to do? He's going to check my bag full of groceries from this store that I've just been in with no receipt. What's he going to do? Honestly, what is he going to do? What is the... And I just... Now, I get it. Like, some of this is like a little bit of theatre, right? It's like, some accountability that... if you are really like dodgy and you're walking out with like, a $300 Wagyu brisket or something, hidden under your, under your shirt
that
or
something.
That would
be impressive. If you could hide a brisket under your shirt, you deserve it.
But I must admit, like, it got me kind of thinking, like, I had this like moment after it where I sort of, if you described this incident to me like a week ago, I thought, oh, that would feel so good. Like, this is what I would do. This is what I would say. This is like, it would be such an empowering moment. But I got to admit, like, I actually didn't feel good about the experience. I actually felt a little bit like shit, like, because I'm like, like, I'm the arsehole here, right? I'm the entitled, like, I'm too important, I'm too special to have my bags checked like everyone else. And I kind of felt like this guy's just doing his job.
Okay.
And I was grappling with that kind of, not so much guilt, because, like, I know that it's my right not to, like, fucking show my personal belongings to this guy, but, like, nonetheless, it's just that, it's that typical kind of entitled, you know, thing that sometimes some people have, like, and I definitely had that in the moment, but partially because I was beat. Anyway, what are your thoughts?
Andy, you can only fight that white privilege for so long. Okay, first of all, I've got a couple of questions just to help me provide a bit of color to this, and let's see how we go. First of all, describe the...
No, it wasn't white chocolate.
Describe the security guard. Was he white chocolate, more to the point?
He was white. White. Yeah. He was pretty preppy as well. Like, he was... he looked like a gym bro, but kind of but like quite well groomed, like, as in not just like a doofus, but like maybe someone who was actually like a university student who went to the gym, and this is like his part-time job or something. It had that vibe element.
It's an interesting thing, because I know you pretty well, Andy, and I know that it's in your nature to want to say those things, to behave exactly how you said, but I am surprised that you actually did that, you know, in real life. I put it down to maybe you're watching too many audit videos and you're just like, you're testing the waters, putting that toe in to see that how does it make you feel being intransigent to power? I don't know. But equally, I'm a little bit surprised how it made you feel guilty. And I think that's that Catholic guilt coming out, that, you know, that it's this poor guy's job. You know, it's like, I often think about that in Kmart, you know, because like in Kmart, right, there's that person that acts like the welcomer, right? So he kind of like welcomes you and has a smiley face, like a Walmart greeter for people in the States. Says hello when you come in. But what he's really there for is to scan and look at your bag on the way out. So they kind of give you the slap and tickle, right? So they try to form some good rapport on the way in, because they know they're going to have to look at your bag no matter what you buy on the way out, right? And I do kind of resent that, right? Number one, because, like, you know, I just think like there's too many, it's such a high volume thing that it just slows down the traffic. And number two, it's Kmart, right? Like, get over yourself. Like, anyway.
Can I just react to the Kmart thing? I agree with you, like 100%. Like, I think just for anyone who's not familiar with Kmart in Australia, they a couple of years back, I don't know how long, maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago, they moved the checkouts from the front of the store to the middle of the store. And then that was probably some like new sort of innovative,
they paid for some consultants for that
hipster, you know, kind of move. And then they realized everyone was just like stealing shit. So then they have this new thing where you have to scan you go to the front of this, as you go out, like you've got to scan your receipt. A little bit like Costco style, if anyone's been to Costco. But it was just, I think that was a really poorly, and I'm not sure they quite realized just how much like animosity
the
their
indignity
customers
of it
have to it.
And you know what? Like, I feel bad for the person, because they usually like, they try to put someone who is personable at the front, right? And they're preppy, but by nature they're very young. And it's like the world's most unholy game of like Space Invaders. You know, like you've got this stream of people, shoppers trying to exit Kmart. There's this one, you know, 15-year-old trying to like stop the flow of traffic and scan all these bloody things. And of course, he's going to miss a few, right? Like, and I purposely do it. Like, I nowadays I treat it like a game. So if I've got something from Kmart, right?
So you got to come chase after you.
This is what I do, right? So I got this little bag Kmart, and usually it's 9 out of 10 times it's some crap for my kids, right? It's not even something of value. But I've got my little Kmart bag, and I can see the flow of traffic, right? And I flank them. So I kind of like hit that F1 slipstream behind someone who has a big bag. And while he's doing that, I just like veer off to the side and leave. And he can't stop me because he's too busy checking the massive bag right in front of me. So I always kind of do that just as a point of principle. But yeah, look, I mean, there's not much dignity left in the world, let's be honest. But I usually beep when I'm carrying something from another store. Like 9 out of 10 times, that's what's happening. If you are just beeping when you haven't purchased anything from the shops to begin with, I think you need to start a process of elimination of your tech to see what's going on, because I pretty much never beep unless I've bought something from another store.
I speculate whether it's my phone. Like, I haven't done the test, but either that or like I've been anal probed or something.
It's got that the Chinese government has embedded something.
Yeah.
Anyway, I've got a return fire for you though, and it's a story that I told, I think, very early on in the show. I'm not going to try to bring up the episode, but it was this night out. We were at drinks with some workmates many years ago, and the drinks were flowing, and the conversation got to an area of dating preferences, right? And at the time, one of the fellas admitted that he if he had his way, he would only date Chinese women, right? Asian women, and he was white.
So, and was he using Chinese as like a synonym for Asian?
Yes. I mean, even that, right? But like, to be honest, like maybe like 8 years ago, it doesn't sound like a long time ago, but the culture, this is like
a Chinaman.
Anyway, so at the time, this was like met with groans from like the group, and just like, oh, what are you doing? Like, you can't do that. That's like really racist. And he's like, what? I love it. I love Chinese women. And then he was, it was just, and I felt like the whole group was like looking at me to make a stand because I am Asian, right? So anyway, fast forward to a very recent drinks encounter, right? And this time, the same topic came up, but in the guise of a very different dynamic. So actually, there was only the white people in the group were the minority this time. It was mainly made up of Asians and Indians and things, Chinese Indians and things like that. And we were talking about the same thing. And then one of the women in the group pretty much said, "Yeah, look, like if I'm really honest, like I only date Indian men, and it's not just because of pressure from my family. I actually only find Indian men attractive."
Was she Indian
Correct.
herself?
Yeah, so she's saying the quiet bit out loud, right? But all the other group were just like, yeah, of course. Like, that's cool. I mean, if that seems natural. Birds, someone even said something to the tune of birds of a feather, right?
I just think like, people are attracted to what they're attracted to, and you can't change that. And at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. And short of censoring people for saying what they're attracted to, I'm not sure what the solution is here.
The solution, as always, is to let the female minorities speak first. Because whatever they say, as long as you don't go above that, you're fine.
Yeah. All right. So we are going to do a tour of the week's hottest media items. Shall we start with Sam Kerr?
Let's do it.
All right. So for anyone who is not aware, Sam Kerr, she's an Australian footballer. She's a female footballer, so from the women's national team here in Australia. Soccer for our American listeners. She is probably like a household name in Australia.
And captains of the, Matildas.
Yeah, of the Matildas. But she's also like in that world too. Like, I think if you follow women's football, she would be known. Anyway, she went out drinking with her, partner, wife. Right. She's in a same-sex relationship. Went out drinking and got, I think, a little bit tipsy, maybe. So the backstory is, I understand, and I might not get all of this right, but essentially what happened is, I think something happened in a cab on their way home, possibly involving puke, and there being, I think, some sort of an argument about cleaning it up or paying for an extra fee relating to cleaning, something of that nature. I'm not exactly sure what was alleged to have happened, like in terms of like there must have been some dispute about it, but it basically involved, and again, if this is sort of, I don't think the facts, are fully clear, but like the taxi driver then basically drove them both to a police station in relation to this matter.
Yeah.
And I think there was quite a lot of frustration from Sam Kerr and her partner about this because they felt imprisoned. Like they felt like their liberty was denied from them. I don't know if the doors were locked, but nonetheless they couldn't get out, and they wanted to get out, and they felt quite distressed at the situation. And that's from their perspective. And then they rock up at the police station, and I don't think they get the hearing at the police station that they thought they would. So we might roll a bit of the tape.
Before you do that, I'll add in 2 details. One, this took place in London, and the second is that Sam Kerr's wife smashed the window of the cab.
Okay. All right. So we'll play the first bit for you.
Listen to the recording, because I've got all the people in the world. Okay, and what's your name? File a police report. I've got fucking Chelsea going on it. Because that is don't worry. I will have the best lawyers. Don't worry. Because I would never fucking say no to pain.
Well,
Listen to the recording. Listen to the recording. No, that's because he's a fucking liar. That's he's a fucking liar, and they're listening to some fucking black taxi man, a black cat cab or whatever they're called, white taxi man or whatever they're called, the cab over us two women. That's a fucking lie. I would pay whatever. That's a lie. Why are you listening to a taxi cab over us two women?
Oh, we're not.
But why? You are.
We're listening to both sides.
No, you're not. I'm gonna fucking call my lawyer. I'm gonna call my lawyer. I'm over these.
I mean, you can call your lawyer if you like to, but I mean, I think it's a little bit irrelevant, right?
No, I'm calling my fucking lawyer because this is a fucking racial fucking thing.
It is not
because you are not letting me go because you're believing that guy out the front over £50.
Right, you need to calm yourself down on this, isn't it?
£60, £100. We don't give a fuck. But you know what? You guys are stupid.
Oh my god, you guys should
You believe him over two women.
Right,
you guys should see what he was.
Can you
listen? Come and pay for what the he did?
I've listened to you a lot because I had no choice to, because you're a very loud person.
You're literally a white privileged man.
Okay, but you don't need to be racist towards me, do you?
No, you're literally, because we asked him to stop. We said, please stop. We said, please stop 5 or 6 times.
A million times.
Can we talk to a major
person?
We want to talk to someone major. Because we're done. You're like irrelevant.
Okay, and so are you.
I'm understanding what
I'm
you're
not
saying.
paying for some dodgy window.
All right. So what's your reaction to that?
Well, look, I remember the press when this first came out, right? And the optics here are that you have this really exalted... you got to remember this happened at the dizzying heights of the Women's World Cup, right? Where Australia did amazing. The Matildas did really well. She was a national hero. She's on the side of freaking Weet-Bix boxes, which is, as Aussie can be, right? And to hear an icon talk like this, number one, I have to call out, it's very jarring. It's like you've got your brand and then you've got things that shatter your brand, and these things are coming together right now in this clip. So that's the first call out. I'll say that it's very jarring to hear a role model in the sport who's meant to be quite wholesome and an inspiration for young kids, young women, speaking like this. And that's devoid of context, but it is what it is. And second is, there is a part of me that goes, hey, it's 3 a.m. You are drunk. And this is all very familiar, that you are not at your best. You're not, it's rubbing up against you, and you are inebriated, and you do not have the faculties to deal with this in a very graceful way. So I do feel those things as well. And then I think this, obviously, that what comes through is the entitlement, right? I've got the best lawyers, and then she throws in the feminist agenda of you're going to believe some dirty cabbie over 2 women? It's believe all women. And so, that all these lines are not coming off well, given the situation.
Yeah, so, I actually just want to loop back to something you said before we played the clip, which was the window was smashed. I understand that the window was smashed because they weren't let out. So it didn't just, I'm just going to smash the window for shits and giggles. It was it could sound more serious than it was in the light of that context, where if you're imprisoned or you feel like you're in prison, that might be something we'd consider doing. I agree with everything you've said. I think that the jarring nature of PR, the PR machine for the Matildas was so powerful and strong that they were all, these delightful, characters, wonderful heroes of Australian, for young girls, heroes to young girls, 11, 12, 13-year-old girls that, are going to take up football because of, these wholesome figures. And they're not,
it's very, very wholesome. Right? Very, very wholesome image.
So there's that. But then even there's another piece of this, which is, I don't know, it's like a paste of mix of
brat.
of entitlement. It's not entitlement like a Karen. You know how a Karen would be very sort of like, do you know what my position is? It wasn't quite like that. It was more geared around like, I don't know how to communicate in a like effective way, so I'm just going to swear at you. Kind of, like it was a very sort of.
Let's be honest, though, Andy, there was a little bit of that. Like there was a little bit of
a little bit, but mixed
complex.
in. But it wasn't that primarily. It was like the girl on the wrong side of the tracks vibe to it, right? It wasn't like sophisticated Karen enforces.
No. But
the world as they see
there was
it.
a little bit of you don't understand who I am kind of thing.
What I'm trying to say is like a mix of both, right? It's a mix of entitled sort of, you better just be careful because like I'll post this on Twitter kind of thing, but at the same time quite just rough, and I think that doesn't align. So it for me it was a bit of a weird mix. So I think this is very costly for her career from a PR
the sponsors, man. But I guess at the same time, like I can hear the frustration. So I understand that kind of struggle of the frustration of maybe feeling like she's been targeted. Maybe she's projecting other elements that she has experienced in her life or representing other things going on. But you can tell that there's a real frustration there of, hey, why aren't you believing me, right? Like I can tell you what's happened, right?
Well, they and then they're getting together. So like her partner, who's American in the one with the American accent, she said something like white male privilege or something to that effect. Yeah. And it just kind of adds to this whole thing. Like, and then I think the less sophisticated or less educated version, I think, came from Sam Kerr, which is, why don't you believe two women? You're going to believe that guy, and actually, I thought almost like she almost kind of fucked up when she said, you're going to trust like a black cab driver. I mean, black cab, what are they called? The black cabs or white cabs?
Yeah.
It's the company.
That was good. That was like that moment where you think you've hit gold
she
dust.
knew she was about to get herself in trouble.
Do you think it was that sophisticated? I thought she literally just fumbled the words. Do you think she meant like a black bastard?
I don't think she would mean that. But anyway, there was definitely like this whole this whole kind of overlay of, male white privilege, we're going to make this like a political thing about, but I think it's what happened next that as much as we might have some views on like just the petulance of Sam Kerr in that first clip, it's the second clip that I think I have some strong views on. So maybe we'll roll that one up.
Let's do it.
Did you stay on the phone long enough to even speak to someone? That's the thing.
Us.
Okay, but they wouldn't do that though.
Oh my God.
They wouldn't do that. You should have spoken to the...
You guys are fucking stupid and white. Honestly, you guys are fucking stupid and white.
Okay.
I'm looking you in the eyes. I'm looking you in the eyes. Like,
So-
that's fucking stupid. I'm fucking over this shit. This is the world fucking problem. Wait on the call. Wait on the call. Wait on
Okay.
the fucking call.
All right. I'll go over at the moment then at 3:17. You're under arrest for criminal damage because there's an allegation that you've smashed that taxi window. You're also under arrest for racially aggravated public order for the comments that you've said. So the reason, that's fine. The reason for your arrest was for prompt and effective.
Okay.
All right. Can I?
Okay.
Can I just, if you just indulge me for a moment, and I just want to walk through a few ground facts here, right? And I say this as a non-lawyer, certainly someone who is, only acquainted with the UK justice system via watching YouTube videos.
But hours and hours of YouTube videos.
So take like with a grain of salt everything I'm about to say. That's what I'm trying to say. But take off the table for a moment whatever you might think of the situation, the behavior, the petulance, the brattiness or whatever. Just take because that's all noise in this, right? And boil it down to the fundamentals of what happened, right? So there was a taxi and there was essentially a civil dispute. And by civil, I mean civil as opposed to criminal dispute about some damage to property relating to some chunder, some throwing up in the taxi. But that's essentially a civil dispute. That's something that it's actually not a police matter. That's actually a civil matter between two parties that can be followed up in court at a later time. That's the police actually don't have a role for matters like that because they're civil in nature. So that's the first point. The two girls, the two football players, were essentially detained, imprisoned by this taxi driver who locked them in the car. I mean, I presume it was that the doors weren't unlocked, otherwise they would have been out of it. Plus, to the extent that they could unlock it and go, like maybe they were driving, the guy was driving, so maybe they couldn't exit safely, right? So in one way or another, they were basically that's like false imprisonment. That's actually criminal.
Okay,
it is,
right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If you're locked, if someone is depriving you of your liberty, that's actually a criminal matter. That's actually, you're not allowed to do that. You can't do that. That's criminal. So there's that. Now you might say, well, the mitigating factor here is he was taking them to the police. He wasn't doing it, but still, nonetheless, that's actually a criminal matter. The damage to the taxi is civil. So let's put that there. Now they're clearly upset by this. They're drunk and all that. They're clearly upset by the situation, and they feel unsupported by the police. And I got to say, I can understand. I think that's a natural reaction because they weren't terribly supported. I think the police were trying to thread this needle of like, okay, well, they're drunk. Yeah, they kind of actually do need to pay like the £80 to clean up the cab. I think the X factor was if there was a broken window of the cab, but that happened as a result of the false imprisonment. So the police were trying to walk this line. Now, they kind of didn't have anything to get them on, so they wanted to leave, but they weren't charged. So why were the girls given the impression that they couldn't leave? The police can detain you for a search if they believe you've committed a criminal offence. If they have evidence that you've committed a criminal offence, they can arrest you. Then they can make a decision to charge you. Like, they should have been allowed to go, basically, is what I think should have happened. That wasn't the case. Now, maybe they were playing some kind of duty of care role. Look, you're fucking drunk. You're staying here, whatever. But they can't. Even a drunk person, police can't just make you stay there. You know, that's not their role. So then they're having these arguments and these argy-bargies about the situation, and the police aren't de-escalating the situation at all. They're just like having it out, right? They're just, rather than just say, look, we're just like, what they should have done is they just said, look, we'll come back and we'll discuss it a little bit later. Let them sort of sober up. Let the heat come out of the situation. No, they're just engaging in the yelling and arguing back at them. And then the piece of resistance. The guy's like, I want to fucking arrest these, at least Sam Kerr, because she's the one with the mouth, right? I want to arrest them. And so what this gutless cop does is he arrests her for criminal damage when that should have happened hours ago by this point, right? This is only happening because he's personally aggrieved. And because she said white, you're white. And I agree that that's nothing to do with it. He's also decided to throw in for racially aggravated public order offence. Okay? That's utter bullshit. Like, that's him. That's this police officer looking for ways to arrest her. If let's put the criminal damage to one side, if he thought the criminal damage was significant enough to arrest her, that should have happened much, much earlier. The only thing that's happened now is she's spoken up for herself. Not very eloquently, but she's spoken up for herself. And the throwing in the racially aggravated public order. Now, a public order offence, I don't know what a racially aggravated component to that, whether that changes things, but a public order offence has to occur in public. If you, let's say you shout and yell abuse to a police officer, and it's just to a police officer, that is generally not a public order offence because they're police. They're trained to have thick skin. So maybe it's different. As I said, bush lawyer from Australia commenting on UK law, so get that. But like, this is just like ridiculous. Yeah. Like, this should have been thrown out. And for her to now be in court on this matter, fuck, this guy is such... seriously. Now, there's all the noise around it, around her being petulant, around... Yeah, race didn't have, like, bring in this woke side of it. But, like, I'm with Sam on this. Sorry. Thanks for indulging me, but I just wanted to lay that all through because you have criminal versus civil, and you have police officer doing a shit job, escalating things, more worried about his own vanity and his own, his own sense of pride than doing his fucking job.
Yeah, look, I agree that it's a dick move, and it's coming from a place of... insecurity. But then again, if this police officer doesn't identify with being white as yourself,
I wouldn't arrest her for
being called white, then bringing race into it. It's like, whoa, I don't have a race. Now, I agree with 98% of what you've said, but the problem is, and this ties back really nicely to you refusing a bag check at an upscale supermarket checkout, right? Like, I'm going to invoke Occam's razor here, right? Like, yes, maybe you're the one nice guy who's taking a stand, but, you know, if someone's trying to not, you know, deny you and just walk away when you want to look at their bag, more often than not, maybe there's something in that bag, right? And I know this is not how the law is supposed to work in an idealistic sense, but Occam's razor, these two chicks are drunk as a skunk, right? They've been in a cab, they've thrown up, they haven't paid for they tried to not pay for the damages, and they've smashed a window as a result of being scared and taken to the cop shop, and now they're fighting with the cops, right? They're verbally sparring with the cops. And I think it's a little bit, you know, like I wouldn't say the police officers are giving it back to them, like what you said. I think the main aggressor, which is why it comes off so harsh on the ears, is Sam Kerr. Probably she feels like she's probably protecting her wife as well and standing up for her. And maybe that's what we would all do for our partner in whoever played that dynamic in a relationship. And so maybe she's naturally coming off a little bit more aggressive. I agree with you. It's incredibly stupid to bring race into it. It's almost like an opening that Sam Kerr left herself exposed to by calling him like a white bastard. And
well, he
white
didn't
privilege.
arrest her for saying the black cab driver.
Well, I mean that
she saved.
She pulled that back at the last minute. That was classy. Wordplay, if anything.
Classic Matilda defense.
Yeah. But I mean, the problem is, right, like I said, Occam's razor, you kind of just know these two probably wonderful ladies, 95% of their life, they were drunk, their judgment was compromised. They were probably, judging by how Sam Kerr talks when she's drunk, she didn't pour it on nicely to this driver. Like there's a lot of things that would lead you to believe that to rob you of sympathy for Sam Kerr in this position. I totally agree that, you know, and you know, because I've stood up for this in the past, that police officers, and especially the bobbies, they don't care about the truth or justice. They care about de-escalation and getting rid of the problem, right? So they have no incentive to this. Now, we could go into a discussion on whether you think it's a good thing that it's, you know, there are no consequences for swearing at police or calling them, yelling out "fuck the police" or whatever. I don't know whether it is, and I don't know whether that would be tolerated in a country like Australia as well. But, you know, that's neither here nor there. I do believe that this was quite egregious, trying to bring some racial motivation into an obviously drunk and distressed lesbian couple at 3 a.m. in a cop shop, right? So, look, here's what it is. Like I said, it feels very familiar. We've all had a night on the town that's ended with not putting our best selves forward. Fortunately, for most of us, we don't have big targets on our back because we're not a celebrity, you know. So I think that this is one of those things, right? And you know,
I want to react to a couple of things you said. One is the Occam's razor thing. I don't think that's the point. The point isn't like what's the most obvious thing that's happened, and you know, it's a question of what are the boundaries of police power and what are the boundaries of what police should be doing, both in accordance with the actual law plus their protocols of like what they should be doing in a situation. Like as I said, this is essentially a civil matter, even if it's a broken window. Yeah, this is literally tops a couple of £1,000s worth of damage, right? And even if they did everything wrong, the police shouldn't have done this, right? They shouldn't. And I'm not actually sure I agree with sort of, oh, they were drunk girls or whatever. They actually looked, as I understand, they were actually quite scared of the situation they were in. They were upset, crying even at this situation. And, you know, as two blokes talking about this, I want to stick up for maybe
You think Sam Kerr looks scared?
Not now, but like during the moment, yeah, probably was. Certainly her partner was. And as two blokes talking about, I actually want to stick up for like maybe a different perspective, which is that, well, two women, you know, like being driven around by some guy they don't know and they can't get out and they don't really know what's going on. That's not like, that's a completely unreasonable position to be in. What should have happened if that cab driver thought,
wouldn't you just offer to pay if that was the case and get out of the cab?
No, but that's not like they obviously at some point didn't even agree that they owed the money, right? Otherwise, they would have just paid for it, right?
Because they were drunk.
That could have been the drunk moment, yeah, absolutely. But unfortunately, what should have happened at that time for that cab driver is they should have called the police, got advice from the police. What do I do in this situation? That's what you should have done. It wouldn't have been lock the girls up, bring them to the police. That wouldn't have been the advice. And so anyway, but the Occam's razor thing, I'm not sold on that. The second thing is relating to like the not like aggravating or whatever and not they were not de-escalating. That cop was not de-escalating. Now, clearly Sam Kerr was the aggressor in that situation. She was like the one wanting to have her say, but that could have been in response to like her feeling quite, and I think this actually was genuinely the case. Like she thought they were quite wronged in this situation, right? But like, yes, she was the one swearing, shouting, all that sort of stuff. But you know why? Because you've got this motherfucker police officer in front of them who she's screaming at. So what the police officer should do in that situation is take away that dynamic. The police officer should have exited the room, should have said, I will return in 1 hour or half an hour, or a colleague will return, and we'll talk about it at that point. Maybe get a different colleague. That's how you de-escalate. That's what the police should do. That's what a professional, trained, experienced police officer would have done, rather than this dickhead. So anyway, I agree.
Like I said, we're talking about the 2% difference I have here. Man, it's tough dealing with drunk people.
I think we should move on from this, but I do just want to say sometimes with things like this, it's your rights. It's the same with the bag check, right? If you don't stand up for your rights, you lose your rights.
I think that he is right, though, in that respect, that it is a condition of entry.
Well, you can't check people's bags.
It's a condition of entry that they tell you about before you come into like a JB Hi-Fi or something, right?
It's unenforceable. It's unenforceable. It's unenforceable both in the legal sense, and it's also unenforceable in the physical, practical sense. Like you can't. Where's the contract that you sign when you enter a store saying you will let them look at your bags? They don't have your consent to that. Where's the sign? Where's the sign at the front of the store saying it's a condition? No, well, not in this store that I went to.
If you go into a JB Hi-Fi and stuff or Kmart, there's a condition of entry.
Okay, well, I can tell you, nobody has the right to do that. Like, if you...
Well, right's a strong word. I mean, they can ban you from entering.
Yeah, they can. Sure. What they can say is, okay, well, if you haven't agreed to our terms, then we will not let you back in this store next time. That's fine. They can do that. But what they can't do is say, well, actually, here's this kind of fake sort of hypothetical contract that you signed by entering our store. So you actually have to show us your bag now. And by the way, if you don't, we're going to actually physically force the search. They can't do that. That's just not a thing.
We're getting into a murky
No one can do
now.
that.
So the equivalent, like if you go into a car park, right, and the sign says, you got to pay $10 for 2 hours, and then you get back, you come to the boom gate and you say, hey, look, I don't agree to that. Force open the boom gate and drive off.
So then it just becomes a civil matter.
You're seeing what I'm saying, right?
But the person at the front of the store can't physically
and he didn't
enforce yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I knew that. And I knew if he attempted to physically do that, like that would actually be he'd probably lose his job, right? So that's what gave me like the courage to just give him a sly look and walk away, right? But your rights, like we have rights as people on this planet, including Sam Kerr yelling at a police officer, and that does not include being like imprisoned, falsely imprisoned. That doesn't include like your liberty being deprived.
Don't you think Elon should stand up for Sam Kerr and her right to call this guy a white bastard?
Yeah, well, why not? I mean, anyway, and I mean, look, I think anyone kind of listening, thinking like, oh, she's obviously in the wrong. Was Andy thinking or whatever? I just kind of think you take all the noise away and just like think about it, like what actually happened. And I think I think it was for like 20 minutes they were locked up in this. Or they were, their liberty was deprived of them for in the order of 20 minutes, something like that, if I remember correctly. That's actually worse for me. Like, if you say what's worse, that versus any damage to the property, that's actually the worst thing that happened here. And then to throw insult to injury, you've got this douchebag who's going to like arrest her for calling him white. Like,
yeah,
fuck
I mean,
off.
that's
Anyway.
you know how I feel about that. That's ridiculous. But I mean,
All right. Let's move on because this is, I've had my piece. I've had my say.
Yeah, there's more than one way to lose an encounter, and Sam Kerr's finding that out right now.
All right. What's up next?
All right. I think we're gonna head to the colony from the empire to the colony and check on the colony. Check on what's happening in the United States. And something that I want to talk about is it's been a blistering start to the Trump presidency. And I want to handle just one item that I think is doing the rounds at the moment. It's a presser that Trump held with Bibi Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel. And to pretty much talk about phase 2. So obviously, Trump's team had a hand in negotiating the ceasefire deal.
Allegedly.
Yeah. Well, someone did. Probably Biden just chose now to do it. Do you think maybe he was the one that chose now to, a couple of days after his presidency ended, to make the ceasefire deal?
No, Biden was president when the ceasefire deal was.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So he chose like the last couple of days.
Well, it takes a bit of time to negotiate these things. anyway, let's get straight to the facts here.
Straight to the facts. Okay. It was a long, in true Trump style, it was quite a long presser. But here are the dot points. Okay, here are the highlights. He believes that the US will take, well, essentially, the words he used, and I'm not going to try to clean it up for him, is that the US will own the leveling and cleanup and redevelopment of the Gaza Strip. Long-term ownership and occupation to rebuild the Gaza Strip, and is promoting the relocation of the 1.82 million Palestinians in neighboring countries, while the US turns the Gaza Strip into the Riviera of the Middle East. Right. So as I was listening to this presser, I just thought, I cannot think of so many inflammatory, mind-blowing, shake-ups to the world order and politics in the Middle East than what is happening right now. There is so many things being thrown in. And of course, the reactions, let alone how it's done in true Trump style, he's come in like a sledgehammer. But essentially, that's what he wants. He wants to relocate. He doesn't want the Palestinians to rebuild the Gaza Strip. He wants a break. He wants a circuit break, shake up the paradigm, and not repeat the same mistakes of the past policies. Otherwise, he believes things will just happen again, and that the Palestinians deserve a place to live in peace and prosperity. And he wants the neighboring countries of great wealth to help pay for it. So, just a quick little presser. And we're only 17 days in, I think. So, thoughts, Andy?
I must admit, my first reaction was, I think this was just Trump not being very careful with his language, and then kind of almost in the process of not being careful with his language, misspeaks, and then realizes that he likes part of what he said when he misspoke. So I think, so I might be totally wrong, and I think there's a possible scenario that we should bring in, but I think we'll bring that in a moment. But I think I must admit, my first reaction to this was, when you talk about owning the Gaza Strip, I actually don't think my first impression was, I didn't think that he necessarily meant it in the way that some people could mean own something, as in it belongs to us, it belongs to America now, we're going to annex it to the American, it's going to be the 50, how many states in America anyway?
51.
The 52nd state or whatever. That's not how he used the term own, and that the term own, I think he meant, or at least the meaning I got from it was more like, this is a big fucking problem. We're going to own the problem to resolve the problem. That's
America's
how I kind of
lean in.
Yeah, we're gonna own the problem. We're gonna support a resolution to the problem. That's how I took it, right? And then when he was starting to get follow-up questions about, well, what do you actually mean? Own, you're gonna own it? And then he said, yeah, we're gonna turn it into the Riviera,
You
America,
can't take the property developer out of the president.
So my journey on this was, I actually saw the headlines before I actually watched the press conference, right? And so I read headlines to the effect of, oh, Trump wants to turn Gaza into the Gold Coast. And I just kind of thought, and then I watched the press conference, and then I thought, oh, I think that's a bit of a stretch, I think let's just walk it back and
a schoolies, but in Gaza?
In Gaza. But, I think this is where, I think it's such a great story, from that they're going to obviously exaggerate it, but Trump doesn't help himself, right? If he felt the media exaggerated the story, and I don't think he did, by the way, because I think he doubled down afterwards. But anyway, so I did question I think everyone kind of took this more than what it actually was. Yeah. But then I had other views about, well, okay, then there's actually what he did say, about, the current approach has been dodgy, so it hasn't worked. So what if you did have a more interventionist, maybe a multi-country, group of nations coming in to rebuild, and not maybe America being the lead country or something like that, but not being America, but maybe the joint task force for Gaza recovery or something like that. Would that be a good idea, and would it be a good idea to do that rather than just like the status quo or things that have been tried in the past? I actually think generally, yeah, I mean, this is an intractable problem, so you kind of need to think a bit differently about how to solve it. So I'm not necessarily wholly opposed to the sentiments behind what he said, except to say there's nothing novel, unique, genius, or amazing about, why didn't we think of that? Like, this is literally like the equivalent of saying, I've got a great idea. I've got an amazing idea. Let's all get rich, like digging for gold. It's a vision without a plan. Like, you can't just say something like that, then think, this guy's amazing because he's like thinking outside the box, without like, how do you actually deliver that plan? And of course, he doesn't have a plan. There is no plan, right?
Concepts of a plan.
Concepts of a plan. But then the kicker is, even if this was like the right thing to do actually, and this was like a really good idea, to then add insult to injury, like Trump is probably the worst person on this planet to deliver that plan, because he's someone who basically is divisive and basically has declared war on every other country on the planet. So he is not the great uniter that's going to save Gaza.
I think it reflected back a lot of the symptoms, right? I think that we're so used to talking about the conflict in certain key terms, right? And certain boundaries that have been placed on the effort to mediate this conflict. And Trump coming in and breaking it, whether it's through some clumsy way or, like you said, he's just ad-libbing off the top of his head or whatever it is, at the very least, it injects the possibility of change, right? And I know that's not the same thing as an actual plan for change, but maybe there are elements that are a precursor. Will get you closer to that goal, not further away. Yet remains to be seen. I think the thing that I've seen in the headlines, though, just is the problem with Trump, that everyone is on tenterhooks. Everyone is so quick to just want to have more ammunition for the meat grinder, to turn out these stories that paint him as complete trash, that they miss it. It's a distraction, like they kind of are hanging off every word for more fodder, that they actually like miss the opportunity in all this. And sooner or later, the world's going to have to realize, like, you've got this guy for another 4 years, right? And you got to work, like, there is always upside and downside to everything. And I do think that it brings to the fore what a lot of the messages were, that actually it does suit some people around the world to keep the Palestinians where they are, right? Like, Trump had this line in there where he said the only reasons the Palestinians want to stay in Gaza is that they don't have any other choice. They don't have a better choice. And people just, like, their minds exploded about that, right? It's like, this ethnic cleansing, you're forcing them out and all this kind of stuff. And if they leave, they'll never come back, and they need to stay there. This is their land. And all these people, can you imagine if we were in the Gaza Strip right now with our families, right? Like, there'd be people who would jump at the opportunity, or even the glimmer of prospect of a safe place to live, right? And I'm not saying everyone, I'm not saying things, but like, let's not pretend that the whole of the Palestinian people are so idealistic that they wouldn't want a better life for their family that didn't involve physical harm and the threat of harm and persecution, right? So like, there's a lot of things going on here that I think that is worth not just shutting down and having these different conversations. We spoke about what's the alternative here, that either Israel, you hand the development back to the Palestinian leadership, right, which Hamas is still there, or you get the Israelis to do it. In some ways, it has to be supported by a third party. I'm not saying Trump is the right one to do it or whatever, and Mr. Riviera, but I think that we've got to have a look at this. We've got to reset the whiteboard, right, the new normal. You got to crush some of those norms and try to come at it from a different angle. And whether Trump has made that better or worse, that remains to be seen.
All right. If you can say he's reset the whiteboard, I think it's probably fairer to say he's brought back the chalkboard.
Yeah,
because I just don't think there's anything novel in what he said. There's nothing. It's not like
it is novel.
It's not novel. People have been saying shit like this for ages, but the reason that they don't say it out loud is because it's full of holes and problems. Like, yeah, let's like take a people who basically their whole identity crisis is that they've been colonialized and have had their home. Like, the whole narrative is around displacement, and let's like, let's add further fuel to the fire that we're going to displace them completely. Like, I mean, I get what you're saying that, yeah, at the end of the day, but would they accept like a safe place to live in Egypt, for example? Yeah, probably. But like, I get that. So I'm not arguing. And, you know, are there other factors that, you know, condemn them to this hell in perpetuity because they're never allowed, you know, citizenship status in any other country or permanent residency or whatever.
They can't leave
full
now,
rights
man.
in other countries. So I get all of that. But like the notion of like redeveloping Gaza or reconstructing Gaza is not like, it's not a novel idea. Like this is in fact, this is probably the default plan as it stands already, that will, okay, so we've got to, like, at the end of the day, like, let's think about this for a moment. What is like before Trump made this ham-fisted intervention, what was the plan? The plan was probably
Israeli occupation.
No, the plan would have been, well, okay, forget who, put to one side who does what for the moment. The plan would have been in the long term. I don't mean in the next like 12 months, 18 months, 2 years. I mean in the longer term, we need to rebuild this city that has like, you know, millions of people living in it, this area rather. And you probably need a coalition of like, it can't be done in the name of any one state. It would probably have to be some coalition of, you know, countries, like under the guise of, you know, how do you bring in aid and reconstruction aid, and, you know, how do you rebuild a political system? Like it would have been a collective combined effort, and that's what pretty much would have happened, right? Or needs to happen anyway. The only difference between that and Trump's proposal is the prominence of the US, that they're going to be the ones doing it. So I think there's nothing novel. In fact, it probably is the status quo plan anyway.
That is not the status quo plan.
Well, of course it is.
The status quo plan was the right to self-determination, that the Palestinians have to rebuild their area.
Well, I don't think the status quo plan was
not
to let Hamas back and rule Gaza. Okay, that's not the status quo
No,
plan.
okay, the Palestinian Authority, right? Like this is completely
so in the long run, it might
upside down from what Biden's view on this would have been.
So I think, you know, this idea of self-determination, like with these things, we've got to consider as well, like to get to, like, let's say the end goal is self-determination, and perhaps it is, well, it should be, and it should be self-determination, right? Because the alternative is colonialism, right? But you need to do quite a few things before you get to that point, including setting up norms, and that could take 100 years, like, frankly, like it could take that long to rebuild, you know, whatever, right? And that's, but you've got to do that in a orderly and structured way. So, but I do think we should turn to an alternative, like, hypothesis, which I think more obviously kind of like accounts for these remarks and accounts for what was said in a way that I think makes more sense and would probably give Trump a little bit more, like, you would, if it was actually the real, like it was actually the truth, you might have a little bit more, you might give him a little bit more credit as being a bit of a strategic mind in this space. Although I'm not 100% sure of that. But what talk us through? What's this alternative hypothesis?
Well, it's the King's Gambit, right? I think it's this idea that Trump's a simple man, everything is a negotiation, it's the art of the deal, and he's setting out some outrageous statements that he never intends to actually follow through on, to wrong foot the power players involved, to try to get Hamas to come to the table, to try to get the different regional players to come to the table and start to work in solving the problem, right? So I think that if you are under the threat of the US coming and essentially evacuating the whole, leveling, those are the words you use, and we're going to level the Gaza Strip, albeit that not all the buildings have fallen over, they're going to level the Gaza Strip. How do you think Hamas would react to that? Like, how do you think the people... And so I think that there's a view that this is a way to wrong foot some of the players involved and encourage the regional players to support, and to kind of almost call a bluff in some ways that actually some of the Arab powers around are claiming sentiments for the Palestinians, but not actually wanting to do, as a cover for not wanting to do anything, because they're worried, and probably, you know, rightly so, of the terrorist element or the social unrest element if they let in some of the Palestinian people. So I think there's that definitely going on. And like you said, is it granting too much to a man like Trump? Maybe, but it also goes to say that this is totally against his character to want to he talks about America getting involved in forever wars. This may be a forever project that if you were to make a guess, does Trump want troops in the Gaza Strip for an indefinite amount of time, governing people, doing checkpoints, managing the flow of goods and services? Like, that's not going to happen, right? So why is he saying it?
Well, he likes tariffs.
As a deterrent, not to actually... So Trump is the kind of guy that in a group project stands up and says, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, it's going to be the best thing you've ever seen, and then you never hear from him again. Like, there's no actual work done. There's nothing... You know what I mean? Like, this is what it is. Like, he's the ideas guy. He's got other people to make it happen, and they slowly have to manage the message to him that what he wanted is not possible. Right? So, like, this is just like a strategy to try to manipulate the position, the chess pieces, in my opinion. But let's see how it unfolds.
All right. So let's say this is true. Let's say this scenario is true, and this is just like this is some grand kind of strategy to get people to act in a different way to how they might otherwise had he not said such a thing. And I think Trump, in that spirit, like if that is the case, I think he would think that he's playing 4D chess and that he's like, see how smart and clever he is. But I don't think it's 4D chess, right? I think, you know,
it's checkers.
the classic thing with when people talk about Trump being like thinking he's this great negotiator, master negotiator, or whatever, is that like the core to negotiating with Trump is to make him think that he's the master negotiator, but you basically have your strategies, like your psychologies, to lure him in and get him to do essentially what you want him. And like, I think that's like a lot of people have kind of indicated that, look, Trump, he's a bit different, but like you just need to know how to handle him and you can get a good outcome, right? You know, when you first started playing poker when you were at like, you just finished high school and, you know, this game, Texas Hold'em poker, you never really kind of, you know, you just like, you had no experience, but you're just, you know, mucking around with your mates or whatever. And you're experimenting with different approaches, right? And like, there's always one guy who goes all in, right? He goes all in, he bluffs. Yeah. You know, he's the master poker player, right? Bluffing with the all in. This is Trump, right? This is Trump. Like, you might win. This player who goes all in on their, you know, second, third, fourth hand with a bluff might win that first hand. But eventually people know that you're full of shit, right? And you get called out. And before too long, you're going to lose. And so this is the deal with Trump. So Trump, if this is the case, right, if this is the big bluff or whatever, you've got to think about not just this game, but the repeated games that you're going to be playing in this space.
Yeah.
And this is why you have like very smart people. Like, I mean, you have like the Rand Corporation back in the 60s that would come up with, you know, all these really detailed game theoretic models for like how you should negotiate sort of different situations, like mathematicians working out like what's the optimal strategy to follow. And you've got people in government doing that kind of stuff, right? Or associated with government, like working through strategically, like what's going to be in our best interest. And you know, they work, like the status quo has been that these people kind of probably say, you could do that, but like it's a bit of a gamble and a risk and has all these downsides. And you have Trump who's just like, I'm not going to listen to you. I'm just going to do what my instincts tell me. That's why I've got like, you know, the Taj Mahal in what's that one in Jersey City or whatever.
Some say better than the real thing.
And like, you know, that's my take on it. Another perspective could just be, even that's giving him too much credit, that he's thinking beyond the veneer of the Riviera on the Mediterranean, like of the Middle East. Like, even that's like, I mean, that's actually genuinely what he wants to do.
Yeah, but that part is not, I will agree, that is not novel. Many people, commentators, have said that when Israel gave back the Gaza Strip in 2005 or whenever it was the vision was for it to be like the Singapore of the Middle East, right? So I think that has always been there, that it can be this thriving international hub with the right kind of development.
Also, just as an aside, I think it does, for me, underscore like the naivety in Trump's... Well, sorry, I don't want to be really clear. Like, I don't even think there is a plan here, so I don't want to overreact to it. But the problem with Gaza isn't buildings, isn't, you know, rubble and construction and the lack of building. The problem with Gaza has been like deep cultural issues. It's been governance and systems. It's been institutions. Like, these are the things you can't build like overnight. These are the things you have to actually, like, this is the hard stuff to build. So even if like it had like massive opulent hotels being built or whatever, like who's running them? Like,
well, man, gentrification is a It's a pretty quick process compared to the things
gentrification
you're
doesn't
talking about.
deliver good government. So, yeah.
Neither does AK-47s. All right, so look, I think people have to think differently about it. This is probably not the right way to do it. It's probably some kind of gambit or negotiating strategy at the one end of the scale. At the other end of the scale is probably exactly what you spoke about, Andy, where he started talking some shit. He realized he was being misconstrued, but he's like, fuck it, I like the sound of that. I'm going to double down on that. It was just as likely to be that. But, you know, one thing that did kind of come out really clearly too is how lockstep he was with Bibi Netanyahu and Israel's interests. I did have some time for that, not because I support that, but because that is what is going on. You have to be realistic that the majority of bombs that have been dropping are American-made, right? This is an American-Israeli alliance. Bring it into the sunlight, be honest about it, and try to fix some of these problems. But it's just so anti-MAGA, you know, this idea of getting involved in a faraway patch of land the size of Bankstown or whatever it is, halfway around the world, when the US is trillions in debt. Like, it's just antithetical to what he ran on as well. So I don't believe he has any intention of doing it, and that I'm hoping that it's just a strategy.
Shall we move on to our third topic of the week?
Let's do it. So I don't make a regular habit of watching the Grammys, but I did think that there was, for something a little bit lighter than the Gaza Strip, there were some quite interesting things that went on in the Grammys this year. And unlike, say, the Oscars, I think the Grammys have had a certain level of inoculation or protection from being irrelevant. And I don't know whether it's just, you know, the coolness that music brings to the culture, that sets the culture. I'm not sure. But when I look at institutions like the Oscars, I put the Grammys side by side, and I feel like the Grammys have come through this period of culture so much better than something like the Oscars, don't you think?
I think the Grammys are like several pegs below the Oscars. Like, I think the Oscars is much more like higher tier, like top tier event.
Maybe it's fallen from a higher point then. But don't you think the Oscars have been really like degraded over the last
I think there's like been controversy, but I think people pay orders of magnitude more attention to the Oscars than the Grammys. But in fact, I think you could probably argue that people care as much about the MTV Awards as they do the Grammys, which if you think of the equivalent in film, you wouldn't say the same.
What about the Nickelodeon Awards?
Well, getting up there.
That slime, iconic. All right, well, let's pick a few points, right? And I'll pick some of the common headlines. I want to start with an Australian who was on the red carpet, and that would be Kanye West's wife, Bianca Censori. And I don't know if you know much about her, but I think is she a Brisbane girl or Melbourne girl? I'm not sure. But basically, she is a model, or she was a model, and she's kind of done the rounds. She's most famous in the last few years. This speculation of being dominated or controlled, or perhaps she's like a submissive to Kanye, who dresses her in the most crazy, revealing, and scandalous outfits out in public. Basically showing his wife off pretty much nude in a lot of places where they've gotten into a lot of trouble. There's been a lot of public nudity, public acts of lewdness. He got a blowjob on a boat that was like photographed by the paparazzi in Paris on the Seine. There's lots of things. And so he showed up, apparently uninvited, onto the red carpet with his wife, Bianca. And she was wearing a fur coat. And basically she unrobed the fur coat, and she was essentially naked. She had like a sheer dress on, but you could see everything. And then they were escorted off. So that was a good start for Australians on the red carpet. But it's created this firestorm of this idea of like something smells and feels so wrong about this dynamic, but yet no laws are broken. Like, how do you look inside someone's relationship, as dysfunctional as Hollywood is, or the media is, and cast any judgment? But something feels so wrong, and it's driving people crazy about this narrative forming that she is oppressed and manipulated, and all this kind of stuff, and she's being humiliated by him and forced to dress nude in public. It's a very interesting story.
I must admit I didn't follow that one. I did see the headlines, but I didn't read what she actually did or what actually happened. I also haven't followed that angle of her being oppressed or, I don't know, what's the word, taken advantage of, or I can't remember the words. But yeah, I mean, I don't think in these situations it's quite as like black and white as that, because I think she's like all up for the attention and the profile, right? Like that's, and it's like it's a bit like the potato, like who's cultivating who? Is it the potato being cultivated by humans, planting them or doing, whatever? Or is it actually the potato taking advantage of humans to propagate.
Were the humans white or are they of color?
Yeah, but I'm going to go to something else in the Oscars. There's a couple of points I want to raise around the actual results, like who won awards and what awards they won and why. So Beyonce, Queen Bee, or Bey, well, I don't know what the thing is to say.
Just mother, I believe.
She won Best Album, and I think that's like apparently a long time coming for her because she's missed out on previous occasion. But like this, for me, there's some kind of irony that all she had to do all along in her whole career was do a country album. You know, that was the missing link. She needed to be more white, you know. So she's done like this country album. I haven't, look, I know like the main song from it, but like it's not one that I've listened to. So I don't really, I can't say much about the album except that I have heard some excerpts from it, and there's some parts of it that aren't don't sound traditionally country, like not obviously country in the like the Dolly Parton sense of the term, right? But you know, I think probably now we're moving into a post-genre sort of world where, you know, I listen to country music or things that are allegedly country music. I'm like, oh, that sounds like rock and roll to me. Like isn't that just rock? Like, so I think there's this blurring and pop music is, you know, rock music sounds like pop music and vice versa. You know, so we're in
Taylor Swift, right?
Well, everything's just merged, I think. So that was the first thing I wanted to talk about in terms of Queen Bee. Now I want to also unashamedly like steal some insights from a YouTuber that I like to watch called Rick Beato, and he's a guy who, you know, is in the industry, but he comments on sort of, so these are all his points, so they're not my own novel comments, but he went through some of the rock awards and who won and expressed some dissatisfaction, including, now I'm going to read out the nominees for the best rock performance. I'm not going to tell you the one who won. I'm just going to tell you the nominees, and then I'll tell you who won. But you have Beautiful People by the Black Keys. You have The American Dream is Killing Me by Green Day. You have Gift Horse by Idols. You have Dark Matter by Pearl Jam. And you have Broken Man by St. Vincent. Now, they're kind of like, that's a bit of that mix of nominees, you know. So those didn't win. So this is best rock performance. So who do you think won
Out of that list?
No, not out of that list. I haven't told you who won. I mean,
okay,
you don't know because I haven't told you, right? So the Beatles. The Beatles win best rock performance in 2025. How many decades after they ceased to exist as a band? When did the Beatles break up? Was it like 1970?
Wait. I think maybe I'm confused about how the Grammys work. Did the Beatles release some kind of compilation, or was it some unreleased mixes, or what?
So what it was, now it was a song called Now and Then, which was a song by English rock band The Beatles, released on 2 November 2023, dubbed The Last Beatles Song. It appeared on a double A-side single paired with a new stereo remix of the band's first single, Love Me Do, with the two serving as bookends to the single. So I think it might have had some...
It was unreleased, was it?
Yeah, unreleased. I think it might have had some, like, AI kind of, you know, John Lennon thing going on. But, like, I think. But, you know, come on, like... now, I'm admittedly, like, we're talking, like, the Black Keys, Green Day, Pearl Jam. We're not exactly talking, like, New Kids on the Block. But, like, I'd be pretty pissed. Like, they're out there, like, actually playing live performances, and the fucking Beatles get it. Like, anyway, so this
would be like Abraham Lincoln coming back as you know, like a Nobel Peace Prize winner or something.
The next one I wanted to touch on, and again, this is all Rick Beato's analysis and insights. Best rock album. Okay, so again, I'll take the same approach, and I won't tell you the winner. Happiness Bastards by the Black Crowes, Romance by Fontaines DC, Saviors by Green Day, Tank by Idols, I don't know if I've said that right, Dark Matter by Pearl Jam, No Name by Jack White. The winner of Best Rock Album is Hackney Diamonds by the Rolling Stones. So the Beatles and the Rolling Stones have taken out the top awards at the Grammys. It's like, if I was a young rock and roll band, I would already be pissed off that the Black Crowes, Green Day, and Pearl Jam and Jack White are nominated. I'd be like, hey, where's the opportunity for me and my young... And to be honest, I've seen I've seen young rock bands, you know, that are doing their thing in the genre. They should be nominated, not these bloody ancient, you know, artifacts from the 80s and 90s. But the Rolling Stones are ancient artifacts from the 60s, you know.
They are, but have you listened to that album?
I haven't listened to the album, but I understand it's heavily auto-tuned.
There is one song that was on my Spotify Wrapped that belonged to that album, I believe, which was The Sweet Sound of Heaven. And I actually think that song is a masterpiece. It has Lady Gaga in it. And it might be, I don't know if it's maximally mastered, like you're saying with auto-tune, but it sounds incredible. So I'll just say, I'll leave that there. I don't disagree with your view that this is, like, I think rock is eternally stuck in the past, and this doesn't help. This doesn't help the image.
Well, I just think that now one of Rick Beato's suggestions is they should have like a seniors tour. So if you're over 50, you don't get to like be nominated for the Grammys. You get to be like considered as part of like the...
I think if you are in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame already, it should disqualify you from getting a Grammy.
Okay, it's either one of two things. It's either we're genuinely going to make it objectively the best, whatever the most significant contribution to the art form was in the year, we're going to give that contribution the award, right? And if it's genuinely that, it's not going to be any of those names that we've just listed. It's going to be some unknown, like obscure band that has like some genius songwriter who's come up with some amazing thing. It's not going to be the Rolling Stones. So it's not that. So there's clearly some kind of, well, yeah, but like if you give it to like the obscure, like alternative thing that no one knows, then no one's going to care or watch the Grammys. Like people want to see the bands that they like and the artists they listen to win awards.
What do you think the value is then, Andy, right? Because you could make, I was talking about the Oscars, right? So it's very common for, a slightly more artistic film with serious dramatic actors to win an Oscar. And it's definitely not correlated with box office revenue. But I don't know if that's the same with the Grammys, right?
I think in both cases there's still like you can't be indie. You know, you've got to be...
Well...
you have to have a threshold of success. Like I think the Grammys, like I presume both the Oscars and the Grammys are kind of like at the end of the day, they're industry run events. So sure, like I know what you mean about it, like a film that's small won't, can still get up or whatever. But like it's more that there's a threshold and like the minimum threshold of whatever it is. But all said and done, I just think it just seems like a popularity prize, or like, what have the different record companies negotiated, like, as opposed to genuinely, like, let's reward artistic merit rather than... isn't that the whole flaw with any of this stuff anyway? That how do you objectively assess or rank this stuff?
Yeah, true. On that subject, I think it is a very sore point for country artists to have someone like Beyonce come in, and it's a big slap in the face.
I suppose when you have white people like Elvis coming and stealing black people's music. I was listening to Led Zeppelin the other day, and I just kind of like, a singer like Robert Plant couldn't exist today because it would just be like, nah, this is like cultural appropriation.
You'll need more than auto-tune.
All right, well, I think we better leave it there, and we'll see what Trump does next week.
He's got to top it.